And coming up later in the show, our Lina Washington is talking to men in South Sacramento about racial tensions and why some say, quote, Sacramento wears the mask well.
Welcome back. As we've mentioned, it has been more than a month since Sacramento police shot and killed Stephon Clark. We showed you how some in the community are trying to heal, and it is indeed a process. Now tonight, Lina Washington is further exploring why. She sat down with 3 men who explain what it's like to be black and brown in South Sacramento. Now, we want to warn you, some of the language you hear may be offensive.
We want to kind of have this conversation, as we discussed earlier, about what it's like here in Sacramento and race relations specifically.
Sacramento being like, you know, the melting pot. I wouldn't call it melting, like I always hear the phrase, you know, they say like the salad bowl. We all in the bowl, but ain't nothing melting, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. Because my earliest experiences with racism was here when I moved to California from, like, I didn't know a lot of this stuff. Really? You know what I mean? Yeah, and I was like, oh, okay. The first time I started hearing, you know, nigger regularly was from white people in Sacramento. I'm like, okay.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't really get it like that in the East Coast. Like, where I'm from, it was predominantly, you know what I mean? And it was white people there too, but I didn't get it like that. Be careful, because everything wears a mask and everyone wears a mask. I say Sacramento wears a mask well. Yeah.
Sacramento wears a mask
well. It does. It does.
And that's funny you say that, because when we were doing this conversation, our executive producer said we want to lift the blindfold. We've been living with a blindfold, and I think that this situation, for whatever reason, lifted the blindfold off of a lot of people's eyes and sparked conversations and uncomfortable conversations in the home. Quentin, I mean, you're raising a 3-year-old daughter right now. As a parent, what is your hope for her, and if you have any fears, I guess, for her moving forward?
She's a target. She's gonna be a target no matter what she does. I mean, I'm gonna teach her from her rights and wrongs. She knows that already.
Growing up, do you remember the conversation that you had with your mom or your dad about how to respond to police officers when they approach you? How old were you, and do you remember that conversation?
Like I said, my father always just say, avoid them. You know what I mean? And he got his reasons why he tell me avoid them. My very first like traumatic interaction with police, I was 10 years old, and the police actually put a gun to my head. Like, I was 10 years old, 10, with a gun to my head. You understand? I was no threat to nobody. As I get older and I see how ruthless they can be, again, I just tell children to avoid them. But I don't recall having the speech. I know my father talked about him. He always said, yo, just stay away from the police. You know what I mean? If you see them go that way, you go that way. You know what I mean? If they're here, you go there. You know, if they up, go all the way down. You know what I mean? But now I get it.
Do any of you know any people besides your father in law enforcement personally? Or know anybody who's going into or expressed interest in going into law enforcement?
Yeah, I have friends. Like I said, I have friends from schools turn into that, and I jam them up when I see them. But it's nothing like super personal. I'm like, you just better remember who you are, where you're at.
Sure. I mean, and even young people. I mean, 25, you're starting to kind of get your career going. Anybody?
Unfortunately, just because of the way that they've handled us, it makes it hard for any of our peers to want to be one of them. So, I mean, you've grown up your whole life being abused and harassed and verbally abused by these people, and then now you're of age to join them and change your community, but you've screamed F the police your whole life. So now how does that look to all your peers and things? But not even how does it look to them. How would you feel having to go to work with the same very people who literally have oppressed you your whole life? So it's hard for any of my peers, I know for sure, to say, oh yeah, I'm gonna go be a cop or in law enforcement. I got bros who would rather be a security guard their whole life than to put on a real badge.
Well, hopefully being able to share your experiences and being so open with them will help some other people kind of understand that they're not alone in this healing process, and can help move this conversation forward and not let it die on the vine. And it's only a matter of time until we are probably having this conversation again, but hopefully something can change between then and now.
Hopefully.
Lina, we thank you. And I have to say personally, I'm convinced that this is a generational challenge, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement. And since the founding of the Black Lives Matter movement, I, as myself as a black man, don't recall my mother having a conversation with me, particularly about my interaction with police. But I guarantee you, if you ask some of these young people today in middle school or high school, that story would be different for them. This will be an ongoing discussion. We've dedicated a part of our website to Sacramento's voices, focusing on race, community, and policing. You can find the link on our homepage at abc10.com.